time that they were advised by a caution message or an advisory message.
Rudder ratio.
They got a rudder ratio warning and they got a Mach airspeed warning.
Mach airspeed, please.
A series of warnings and alarms are going off. Strange, obscure systems. Most pilots wouldn't immediately know what they meant. Then a warning that does mean something to Captain Erdem. His airspeed indicator says the plane is going much too fast. If the plane goes too fast at this low altitude, it will fall apart. Erdem's first thought is to slow the plane down. But the co-pilot is getting a different story from his instruments. His say the plane is already slowing down.
The captain is getting conflicting information, and his decision-making and his diagnostic ability are slowed because of the lack of understanding.
Caution, 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 caution.
With conflicting readings from the two indicators, the captain thinks the instruments must be broken.
Caution, caution, caution.
He tries rebooting the system to see if that will make the warnings go away.
They made a decision to pull the circuit breakers.
But the warnings don't go away. The autopilot tells him the plane is now going so fast, it's about to break up.
High airspeed warning, the Mach airspeed warning horn went off.
But right next to him, First Officer Gergin's indicator says they're flying too slow and getting slower. Too slow, and the plane will stall and fall out of the sky. Are they going too fast or too slow? Everything rests on Erdem's next decision. Time is running out. He has to choose. He pulls back on the throttle, killing the power to the engine.
The stick shaker activated. The stick shaker is a last chance device that alerts the flight crew that the aircraft is approaching a stall.
The stick shaker means the plane is going too slowly. But the overspeed warning is still telling the pilots it's going too fast. This should not be possible.
You would never expect to get an overspeed warning and a stick shaker to be happening at the same time.
Before the pilots can process what's going on, Flight 301 stalls. The plane is now in free fall, with no means of control. For the passengers, it's the first indication anything is wrong.
An aerodynamic stall in a transport airplane will produce an experience in the cabin that'll be felt by all the passengers. There'll be a lot of vibration and shaking going on.
It's obvious to everyone on board this isn't routine turbulence. At last, Erdem realizes the awful truth. He has made the wrong choice.
The captain, he pushed the throttles back up to full power.
The slow speed has made the plane's nose point too high. At this angle, air isn't being pushed into one of the engines. Instead of roaring into life, when Erdem pushes the throttle, the left engine dies.
The aircraft was, at that time, operating so slowly that the left engine did not accelerate to full power. The right engine did. Which began to push the airplane quickly into a left spiral and spin. Airliners are not designed to do that.
The plane is now spinning out of control.
It would have taken a lot of height and some very, very skillful flying to get it out of spin.
The pilots tried desperately to program the autopilot to keep them in the air. They're still hoping the plane can save itself.
Observation altitude okay, sir. You may level off. Not climbing.
Bergen Air Flight 301 is completely destroyed. The lives of all 176 passengers and 13 crew are lost. What no one could realize at the time is that the thing the pilots had hoped would stop the crash had in fact been intimately involved in it: the autopilot. On the 25th of February 2009, it is en route to Schiphol Airport. In the cabin, Mustafa Bacecioglu is happily snoozing while his cousin relaxes.
Yeah, it was one of the best flights because I sleep really from Istanbul.
In the cockpit, everything seems normal. The only oddity is that one of the radio altimeters is playing up. It has been saying that the plane is flying at -8 feet when it's actually at 37,000 feet.
Radio altimeter.
But it's a common fault on the new 737-800. Captain Hassan Arisan isn't the least concerned. Then, after 3 hours of cruising, the plane starts its initial descent into Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam.
My cousin waked me up. He said, hey, you know, you're going to land.
Landing that day is made a little trickier by the weather.
The visual conditions were, no, not really bad, but not good. We're in the clouds still 700 feet.
This level of fog is hardly serious. And anyway, the plane's highly advanced autopilot is designed to cope with any weather.
It was still well within the capabilities of shooting an instrument landing system approach.
In fact, Turkish Airlines has such faith in the autopilot that it is standard practice to use it for landing in all conditions. With the autopilot firmly in control, as the plane descends to 1,000 feet, the crew start going through the pre-landing checklist.
Clear for land, thank you. Established altitude 6,000.
It means no one is paying attention to what the autopilot is doing.
Speed brake. Speed brake off.
They are conducting the approach. Their minds are on other things.
Flaps 40. Green light. Running checklist.
They are not watching every aspect of the flight.
Altitude set 500. All lights on.
And then
the stick shaker went off. The stick shaker would get everybody's attention immediately.
For some reason, the engines are powering down.
The captain would not have been expecting the throttles to close by themselves.
The plane is stalling. The captain freezes.
The captain took several seconds before he actually did anything. It's too late to recover the aeroplane.
And then we fall out the sky.
The plane hits a muddy field well short of the runway. It then breaks into 3 pieces.
The moment of the impact, nobody can remember it because it was impact. This is not, I cannot explain that, really. That was very, very hard. Everybody was still. There was no noise. Then, like somebody said, action. Somebody takes his bags, me too. I take my bags and duty-free articles, and the duty-free articles, I take that for my mom, because I was 1 year old when my father died, and my mom, she was always with me. I think that was the reason why I take the duty-free articles with me. Yeah, it was 20 till 30 seconds time that I get out the plane. My way, there was a pregnant woman. I take her with me to outside of the plane.
We are at this moment looking at a very large emergency. It looks like we lost an aircraft.
Cohen Sprinkelkamp is a journalist. He was driving by when the crash happened.
I was able to see the cockpit, but it was all crushed up and it was beyond any recognition.
Amazingly, 126 people survived, but all 3 pilots, 1 crew member and 5 passengers lose their lives. Many others are seriously injured.
We walk away, we turn, when we turn back and we see the plane, that was the moment that we say, this is the crash.
It's been a blustery night on the East Coast, and the flight has already been delayed by the weather for over 2 hours. Still waiting to board the plane is 27-year-old John Perry. He's arranged to meet someone special at the airport.
John had flown from Amsterdam. He landed in Newark. My dad was actually talking to John as he was waiting for Nicole to arrive. The last thing that John had said to him was, "Okay, I see Nicole coming, I've got to go."
John and girlfriend Nicole have continued a long-distance relationship since his move to Europe for work.
Jonathan and Nicole hadn't seen each other for probably 2 to 3 weeks. They wanted to come to Buffalo on Valentine's Day weekend. They were going to see Nicole's family and go skiing that weekend.
There's an especially important reason for the trip.
We knew that they were going to live the rest of their lives together. And we were absolutely ready and wanting to bring her into our family even more than she already was.
Folks from the flight deck, we're still about number 10 to departure and should be airborne just shortly. So please make sure your seatbelts are fastened tight. Thanks.
Flying the plane will be 24-year-old First Officer Rebecca Shaw and 47-year-old Captain Marvin Renslow. They're flying a turboprop Dash 8 Q400, a workhorse of a demanding regional industry.
Flying for a regional airline like Colgan, it's challenging work. flying the turboprops, which generally stay down low. You're in the weather. You're not above the weather. You're dodging thunderstorms. A lot of takeoffs and landings. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
9:20 p.m. After lengthy delays, Colgan Flight 3407 finally gets clearance for takeoff.
Power check, 80 knots. 80. V1, rotate.
It was just another flight. It was just another evening going from Newark, New Jersey to Buffalo, New York.
Flight 3407 continues through the cold skies of upstate New York towards Buffalo. As they near their destination, the crew receive contact from Buffalo Air Traffic Control to prepare for landing.
Colgan 3407, descend and maintain 4,000.
Ladies and gentlemen, in preparation for landing in Buffalo, please be certain your seat back is straight up and your seatbelts are fastened.
The passengers prepare for the descent.
So they're starting their descent into Buffalo on this routine night in a routine flight. Everything seems to be normal.
And that's another thing he said. Oh yeah, in 6 months' time you'll be upgraded into the Saab and blah blah blah.
The atmosphere remains relaxed as the plane gets closer to Buffalo. Landing preparations begin.
Ears down.
Flaps 50. For landing chest lift.
But there's a problem.
That stick shaker is there to tell you the airplane is stalling.
Jesus Christ! The plane's speed has dropped to a critically low level. It's now dangerously unstable.
When it loses complete aerodynamic lift, it will fall out of the sky. It rolled, it yawed, it went left, it went right, just giving a nightmarish ride to those poor passengers.
The pilots fight to keep the plane in the air.
Plane flaps up, take the gear up. Take the gear up.
But it's too late.
We're down.
It just started losing altitude very rapidly.
The plane stalls and falls from the sky. What was a perfectly normal flight is now doomed.
I know she would have been concerned about all of us, waiting for her, because she knows what would happen. I'm hoping she thought that somehow that plane could come out of the stall, because it went up and down. I can't even imagine.
And one on the ground. It's the worst U.S. air disaster in over 7 years. And no one knows what caused it.
What we do is get the flight data recorder, cockpit voice recorder back here, then start working the data.
The precious data recorders from Flight 3407 are recovered from the crash site. They may hold vital clues to what went wrong.
Put the wing flaps up, hit the gear up.
Taking a look at the cockpit voice recorder tapes, we knew that early on that we could see both in the flight data recorder information and from what the crew said that the aircraft had encountered ice during the flight.
In freezing temperatures, ice can build up on the wings of an aircraft, changing their shape and reducing their lift as they cut through the air. So in order to counter the reduced lift and avoid a stall, the aircraft must fly faster than it normally would. To remind the pilots to fly faster, the Dash 8 is fitted with a sophisticated speed reference system that takes account of the effects of ice.
There would be an indicator in the cockpit telling you, because of the conditions outside, that you need to increase your speed for safe operation of the flight. It's going to tell you exactly when that stall is going to happen.
The red zone on the display indicates a dangerously low speed. So were the pilots flying fast enough to be out of the red?
Looking at the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, the airplane got it slower.
Another thing he said, oh yeah, in 6 months' time you'll be upgraded into the sub, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like thinking...
While the pilots were chatting, the plane was slipping further and further into the red.
They didn't pay attention to the speed reference. They were distracted with other things.
I'm like thinking, you know what?
Renslow and Shaw had broken a crucial safety regulation.
In the Northeast, I have 1,600 hours, so...
They were not abiding by the sterile cockpit rule. Below 10,000 feet, the crew should maintain conversation only pertinent to the flight. They were not abiding by the rule and not fully focused on the flight itself.
For Tom Houter, this seemingly innocuous chit-chat is disturbingly familiar. An earlier disaster still haunts him, but it might provide a clue. That story began 4.5 years earlier in a hotel room in Burlington, Iowa. 48-year-old Captain Kim Sass is preparing for another day in the air.
The crew got up in the dark very, very early in the morning to start an early shift.
Captain Sass's co-pilot is 29-year-old Jonathan Palmer. They work for Corporate Airlines, a regional operator in the Midwest that requires its pilots to complete a high number of fast turnaround flights in a single day. Today, October the 19th, 2004, Sass and Palmer are scheduled to complete 8 flights. There are 13 passengers on board Flight 5966, most of whom are medical professionals traveling to a conference. Among them is 69-year-old Dr. John Krogh.
The people on this flight knew each other, had been to these meetings before, and were very happy to see each other. I was accompanied by my secretary, Wendy Bonham. Wendy was actually a friend as well as a colleague. We were all pretty relaxed.
5966 begins its descent.
Look. Ooh. So eerie and creepy. I get a suffocating feeling when I see that. I'm drowning.
As the plane continues its descent through thick cloud, Sass and Palmer are beginning to realize just how difficult a task they've taken on. They're approaching a critical point.
1320. What do you think? I can't see the ground there.
Minimum.
I can't see anything.
They've reached their minimum descent altitude. It's the lowest they're allowed to go when they can't see the ground. Any lower and they risk hitting something. They decide to continue. It's a decision that has jeopardized the lives of the passengers. But they remain oblivious.
My thoughts were pleasant thoughts, greeting my daughter and her children who were waiting for me there. Just a pleasant anticipation of a reunion with my family.
Flight 5966 is now only a few hundred feet above the ground, but the pilots still can't see anything. What's more, they're about to make another critical mistake.
We get rid of the director.
They switch off the system, warning them of their dangerously low altitude.
Their reaction to that was just, shut up, we know we're getting closer to the ground. So they ignored it.
Sass and Palmer are now dicing with death.
Getting a little slow. What, 35? No.
Think rate.
No, 3. No! Oh, God, no!
Craig, for joining us. I'm Susan McGinnis. At least 8 people were killed in the crash of a small commuter plane in northeastern Missouri. Rescuers desperately search for victims through the night.
Corporate Airlines Flight 5966 crashes into trees over a mile away from Kirksville Airport. The plane was nowhere near the runway. Pilots Kim Sass and Jonathan Palmer are killed instantly, along with 11 of their passengers.
This passenger on that plane, I was 69 years old.
Once more, it's the job of the National Transportation Safety Board in Washington, D.C. to find out what has caused the disaster. Lead investigator Tom Houter is in charge.
Once again, I'm head of aviation safety, so all the investigators work for me. We put together an investigative team to go out to Kirksville. What was going on with this flight crew? Because the discussion and behavior was very different than what I normally hear on cockpit voice recorder tapes.
Ooh, so eerie and creepy. I get a suffocating feeling when I see that.
Not only is the pilot's behavior unusual, it's in breach of that crucial safety regulation, the sterile cockpit rule.
Below 10,000 feet, they were not maintaining the standards you expect. They should be focused on the approach itself.
Captain Sass and First Officer Palmer had made the same critical mistake as the pilots of Colgan Flight 3407 were to make 4.5 years later. They lost focus during a crucial stage of their flight.
They knew that it could kill them, but they did it anyway. So, why?
Altimeters are 29990.
Set and cross-check.
The investigation quickly shifts focus to the pilots. Who were they? And why had they made these suicidal decisions?
I can't see anything.
Houter calls on human performance investigator Malcolm Brenner to find the answers. Second.
There were toxicology tests performed on both pilots, and both of them were negative for drugs of abuse and for major prescription medication. We realized that drugs were not an issue.
So how could their bizarre behavior be explained? Brenner retraces the pilot's footsteps in the days leading up to their fateful flight.
Decision-making and the performance of these pilots in a way that contributed to this act.